Well, welcome back. We have got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking with a man who has caught the vision of reaching young people for Christ. And, folks, you're going to enjoy this conversation with Greg Griffin. He is amazing. He is a man of God. He doesn't brag about himself. I have managed to tie him into a chair, and he will take thanks that way, but that's about the only way to do it because he's a humble man. He's a man who's caught the vision of speaking into the hearts of young people. And how does he do that? Well, there's several different ways, but one of the main ways that he does it is by bringing in Christian concerts. And he has basically obeyed the call of God in his life. And Andrews, Texas, is on fire. Their young people are on fire now. And it's an amazing, amazing thing to watch. Greg Griffin with GTG Automation and What Yeshua Can Do Camp Ministries. And, Greg, it's great to see you.
It's great to be here.
Thank you for coming in and sitting in with me today, and we're going to share a little bit about you. And I know you don't like talking about yourself, but we're going to pry it out of you today, okay?
All right.
All right. First of all, GTG, let's just talk about that. I mean, this is what's really kind of funding your vision for Christ, GTG Automation. What is GTG Automation?
GTG Automation is a company that I formed in 2007 that does oil field automation. And oil field automation has come about a lot because of the regulatory agencies not allowing us to have open pits, release gases, that kind of stuff, environmental stuff. So we have to monitor our facilities a lot harder. When a tank gets high, we need to call somebody out to where they'll turn wells off, or we automatically turn wells off.
Right, that's kind of an important thing, be able to do it immediately. If you're waiting on somebody to show up, it can't always be, people aren't that reliable, but your automation services are.
That's right. They doesn't take vacation, doesn't sleep. Automation really started back in the 80s in the oil patch. The technology wasn't there, so your host was smart and your end devices were stupid. So you had to have your host polling everything, so you couldn't watch everything at all the time. So, as technology grew, we have equipment in the field that's smart, so we don't really need to rely on the host as much, except for when we're in alarm condition to get that alarm out to cell phones, since cell phones are, everybody practically has
That's
one.
the leash for on everybody, yeah.
So basically we can put your facility on the web to where you can see it from anywhere in the world and either monitor it or function valves or do turn wells off, whatever you need to do from your living room or wherever you're at.
Right. So, Greg, what caused you to get into this business? I mean, seriously, this is not something you wake up and go, I think I'm just going to be an automation guy today. How did this start out?
I hired on with a company called Amoco that's not in West Texas anymore. And I hired on as a roustabout, and it was in the 80s when things started slowing down, and I was in Monahans, and Amoco was going to sell Monahans, so I was trying to get a paid move. Roustabout is your lowest paid employee in the oil patch, and the automation techs was the highest paid. So I just looked at the org chart and was trying to move up, and automation was just kicking off, so there was a lot of bid sheets for automation techs. So I kept bidding on them, and I never was called, so I finally called the man that was in charge of getting the sheets, and he said I needed to go back to college to get 3 years worth of night school to be qualified. So I started the trend then and worked for Amoco, which Amoco and Shell went together, formed Altura, and then Oxy bought Altura. So I spent 21 years with the majors before deciding to go into the contractor world. I worked for a company called Well to Web for a few years, and then decided to go off on my own, and me and my wife and another man started GTG.
Very good. So let's delve into what's going on with you today. We just covered the past. Let's talk about where the future lies. Right now, you're in a position where your business kind of fills that gap. I mean, right now, many folks who want work done have to go through a contractor. They have to go through 3 or 4 other different people to get to the person that needs to do the work for them. And you've kind of eliminated that whole middle area, haven't you?
It started out in the oil patch, the programmers, and that's really all I wanted to be, was the programming into the automation, because that's where the the bigger dollars are. But every time that we went to do a facility, I would have to hire crews off of competitors. So they would never give me the same crew twice, and they'd always give me their least experienced crews. Well, when the conduit isn't put in right and the wires aren't pulled right, it doesn't matter how well I program it, it doesn't work. So what we were finding out is when there was an issue, they would call, say, Company A. Well, Company A would get out there and they would say it's Company B's fault. Company B would get out there and they would say it's GTG's fault. Well, the problem is the company man was really getting tired because he had a problem and he couldn't get it resolved. So what we put together, we went ahead and hired crews. I got basically one-stop shop with automation. We'll put the drives in if we need drives. I built a welding shop to build our panel racks to where the boxes, the enclosures fit the panel rack right, and we used to call it a drip collar. When it rained, people would put a awning on the panels where you're working underneath, but they would never go out there and work on them when it was raining, and it would drip right off the awning right down your shirt collar. So we designed ones that really work for when you're working in that situation. We have a fold-over antenna pole, just things that make things convenient for you. And then we would put the conduit in, and we would pull the wire. We put in devices in that we know have stood the test of time. GTG is not your low bid, but they will be your long-term, low-cost provider. And what I mean by that is we put in equipment that will last for years. 10, 15 years is what we're getting out of some of this equipment. We never have to go back and touch it, which saves the company's money. When I started out in automation, employees were cheap and equipment was expensive, and nowadays it's just the opposite. The equipment can be pretty cheap, but the people to go out there and work on it is what's expensive. So if you can keep us out of the field, it cuts down on your bottom line. And, and that's basically why people have put in automation, whether it's building cars or whatever, is to do away with the folks that go out there and want to work 40 hours and then go on overtime and call in sick and take vacation. The automation's out there watching your business 24/7. And if it's good automation, you just really don't have that many problems because technology has come so far with electronics, as we know. Doesn't take very much space to do quite a bit.
Yep. And that's something I guess we should talk about too, is that, Greg, we're speaking with Greg Griffin with GTG Automation. Let's talk about the mentality. I mean, I was raised by World War II parents that came out of the Depression. They had me late in life. And I learned a work ethic. I think, and you'd probably agree with me, that that's something that's desperately needed. There's just a whole bunch of people that think they're entitled to something, and they're not willing to work for it.
When a lot of the kids come on, they want a position and a paycheck. And we try to encourage the guys to come and get licensed. There's a lot of people that don't go to college. And, I was encouraged to go to college, but I didn't go. But there's a lot of jobs out there that aren't required a college education. Plumbing takes 8 years to get a master's in plumbing, takes 8 years to get a master license in electrical. There's 10,000 less plumbers in Texas every year. So there are fewer and fewer kids going to trade school than there was in the past. When I went to high school in Andrews, and when I went to school, we took a test, and the guys would say, "Oh, you can go to college," and they'd say, "Oh, you better go to trade school," or, they would kind of give you a direction, and it was okay to go to trade school back then. We have a lot of people that are pushed to go to college. They go get a student loan because they can't afford it or their parents can't afford it, and they graduate with a degree, and they're taught to expect a job that they come out of day one out of college, and they have this big weighted burden on them called student loan. Years ago, a student loan was a good thing, and it was cheap interest, but now it's just another way to get the government to get their hooks in you. We have a lot of people on government aid, and then if they're not on that, now we're getting hooks in them with the student loan that they get to pay back till they're 50 or 60.
And that's just not the way to do things. That's not a biblical way to handle your finances, you're not being a good steward. And looking at colleges these days, I don't think you're getting the education that you're paying for. I mean, let's take a look at some of the ridiculousness that colleges are spewing out there, and it's not a real life, real world view of what it's like in the business world.
That's correct.
Or in society as a whole. Well, we'll save that for another discussion. Let's talk a little bit more about your life's journey with Christ. Can we jump into that a little bit?
Yes. I was raised, they call them drug kids. I was drugged to church every time the doors were open. And I like to tell people, once I graduated high school, I kind of went out and built my testimony for a few years, 30-something years. And, I believed in Jesus, but you couldn't tell it by the way I was living. I drank a lot, and just wasn't following Christ. Both kids were saved, and I'm glad for that. And my parents took them to church also. Miss out on that. But about the time I started GTG, me and the wife was having issues because of the company that I'd worked for previously. We were staying out at the shop, drinking nearly all night long, and getting up and going to work the next day, and just wasn't seeing a whole lot of her, so she wasn't real happy. Well, I knew that God was leading me to get back into a church, and I've been hearing about this cowboy church there in Andrews. I am not a cowboy, but
you couldn't tell it by your voice. Of course, we all have that twang out here in West Texas, don't we?
So we went, and if I'm not on time, I don't go. I hate walking in late. Something that was stressed to me by my parents, my dad especially, taught me to be early, and that was on time. And to be on time was to be late, and I just don't go anywhere late. So I was used to things starting at 11. Cowboy Church starts at 10:30. We show up. I'm not going in. We leave. And I now know it was the devil. The second time we went, they were having a business meeting, so we turned around and left. The third time we finally went, got in, wasn't there 10 minutes. I looked at my wife and I said, we found a home. The Lord really started working on me, going to Crossbar. The business was growing. I was trying to have a church life, a home life, and a business life. And the more that I learned at Crossbar is you have one life. And if you will live it the way you learn it at church, it just works. So we started doing Matthew 18 is a big scripture that cowboy churches believe in, and that's if you got an issue with the brother, you go to your brother. And so when people would come into my office and they'd say, hey, I got a problem with so-and-so, I'd say, time out. Let me get so-and-so in here, and if you want to talk about him, you're going to talk about him sitting right there beside us. And we've started that, and it's really worked. Well, we don't have any backstabbing that I'm aware of anyway at the workplace, but the more you put God in control and in your life, the better things operate. 4/4/08, I gave my life to the Lord again, gave my business to the Lord, and God runs the place. People wonder how you can do that, and it's easy to say, and it's hard to do a lot of times, but it's a lot more peace when you are allowed to do that. There's been so many things that have come into play with GTG. I'm not a businessman. Again, I'm not a college-educated man. It couldn't have happened unless God did it. God put people in my life that have grown the business. I'm going to give you one example. There's a man named Rod Ruthhart that's I'll say genius like some of the other guys do in electricity. He was originally from Ozona, Texas. He went down to Dallas in his 20s and learned the industrial, commercial end of electric, grew with the company. Just really knows it inside and out like nobody else in West Texas. We're oil field electrical, and anybody normally that does residential or commercial electrical has got an oil field background, and they kind of do oil field in a building. But Rod's not that way. But anyway, I've got a place south of Ozona, and I had a hand that stopped off in a barbecue place in Ozona, and that's where Rod through other circumstances has wound up. And he gave Rod one of my business cards and said, call this man. Well, I wasn't looking for anybody, so God didn't have him call me, but he had my business card. He thought he dialed my number, and he got my son. And my son listened to his story and called me and said, Dad, you need to listen to this guy. So I called Rod, and Rod came down, and I made him an offer, and he told me that he hadn't had an offer like that since he was in high school. So I didn't know what the going rate was for a person of his knowledge and salesman.
So that wasn't a good thing when he said no.
No. But God put us together. He was struggling, had a business go Chapter 11. So I was able to put him in a house and furnish him a truck, and it was something that we needed. And all from a guy stopping off at a barbecue place in Ozona, Texas. It's just, and I can tell you story on top of story of how some of the employees have come. We have branched off. I'll back up a little bit. Housing got to be a problem in West Texas, as y'all know. And I would run ads in the Dallas-Fort Worth paper for employees to come to interview. Well, they liked what they saw with GTG automation, but when they went out and looked at the rent, and it was $2,500, $3,500 for a 2-bedroom with the ceilings falling in, they'd say, sorry, but I'm going back to Dallas. So I got into buying rental property and fixing rental property up to where I could rent it to them at a reasonable rate. Well, when we got into that, we found out how hard it was to get a plumber and an air conditioning man. So I bought out a business out of Seminole that was a plumbing and HVAC business. It fit real well with us. What we do is one guy, he's a helper. He may be an electrical helper today. He may be a plumbing helper tomorrow. He may be a HVAC helper the next day. But I don't have this overhead of somebody sitting around the shop waiting for somebody to come in for a plumbing job. The employees get a little taste of electrical, get a little taste of plumbing, get a little taste of HVAC, get a little taste of the wellness shop, so they can decide maybe what career path they want to go down, because it does take such a long time to get licensed in each career. What that has helped us do is when we walk into a business and they're remodeling their shop or building a shop for the first time, we go in, do y'all know anybody that does it? Yeah, we do that. Do y'all know anybody that does this? Yeah, we do that. So the people that are building this, they don't want to have 15 different companies they deal with. They like dealing with one. So I've got an IT department also to where we put in the infrastructure for your computers and your network. And so when the building's built, we can go in and do the electrical, we can do the plumbing, we can do the IT, and we do electronic gates through solar panel. We do solar panel water wells, or solar water wells that run off of solar panels. There's just a whole lot of stuff that we've incorporated to be able to do with the knowledge base of our company.
Pretty amazing. Now, people may be wondering, well, you guys sure are talking a lot about business, but if you have a biblical mindset, you understand that what you do every day. In other words, somebody says, well, what's your ministry? Well, I go and I do this for the church, or I go do that for the church. And they fail to recognize that what they do every day, what they put hands on every day to make a living, is their ministry.
That's correct.
A lot of time. That's your gifting. And people need to understand that maybe the ministry that you're waiting for God to show you is what you do right now. That's where you're going to meet people. That's where you're going to get the contacts that you need to maybe make a difference in somebody's life, whether that's in business or maybe helping somebody along the road where they can have a career where they go reach a whole bunch of people.
I don't know how to say this without it really sounding bad. When I grew up in church, a lot of the people that was there on Sunday, including deacons, when I saw them out in the workplace during the week, I couldn't tell that they had been to church on Sunday. It's the way you live your life that makes people want to be a Christian, not the songs you sing on Sunday. So, we have a lot of youth ministers that work for me now. and I have several employees come to know Christ while they worked for me, and I believe it's due to the fact that the way that we live our life at work. We play a lot of Christian music on the radio over the intercom, and that does bring peace. When you're not living or not listening, trash in, trash out. When you're not listening to what's on a lot of the airwaves today, it's embarrassing when I pull up to a convenience store with my grandkids of what's coming out of people's vehicles' windows, because you never heard that when I was growing up. If you said those words, it was behind closed doors or way far off, but society today is just pretty trashy. One, because they get by with it, and two, I think they like to draw attention to themselves with it. So there's a lot of employees. My office manager is on most of my employees' list to where she can go pick their kids up from school. It is a family-based business. If they get sick at school, we go get them, bring them to the shop, and they hang out in the shop. We've got games and stuff that they can do till their parents get home and get off of work. So we're really family-oriented. Everybody really cares about each other. And I, it's one thing to talk safety. It's one thing to do safety. It's one thing to read scriptures, and it's another thing to live them out. And when they see where your heart is, most folks really enjoy working with GTG.
Yes, sir. We're talking with Greg Griffin, GTG Automation in Andrews, Texas. Greg, let's jump now to what's an offshoot, I guess, and what's grown out of your business and your ability to bring concerts into your city and really just kind of minister to the kids where they are, which is their music. That's their biggest, I guess, influencer for young people right now is what they listen to. And if you can affect them with music, you found out that you can reach them.
That's right. A lot of the kids will not go to church today. Back in 2012, Casting Crowns came to Odessa, Texas, and I'm all the time looking for something I can take my grandkids to where I'm not embarrassed. But there's just fewer. Harlem Globetrotters, is about the only thing that comes to town that comes to mind that doesn't have a lot of violence and a lot of bad language in it. It doesn't matter what's in the movie theater. Most of it has bad language or things that I don't want to be a part of teaching my grandkids, basically. So Casting Crowns came to town, and we were all waiting for them, and I bought a bunch of tickets, some to give out to the church, but some to give to my nieces, nephews, sister-in-laws, my kids, and my grandkids. And we had a couple of rows up front, and we all showed up, and it was an awesome concert in Odessa. And went home that night and went to bed, and the good Lord woke me up, and I was in the bathroom, and he had told me, he said, "This is what I want you to do. I want you to bring Christian concerts to Andrews." And I was in the bathroom arguing with him, and my wife thought I was on the phone, and she just wanted me to come back to bed. And, every excuse that I could come up with, he already had he knew, You've probably argued with him before. You know how it is. You're not going to win this, but you're still going to argue. And I don't know anything about concerts, and that's what I was telling him. Call this guy. He knows how to sing. He knows about concerts, and that's not what he wanted. He wanted me to do it. So I went and stood up in the church, and they knew that I was after the youth. We had some youth sleeping in the park, and I didn't have that growing up in Andrews. If I would have been thrown out of my house, somebody would have brought me into their house and raised me. We just didn't have the issues. We didn't have single parenting. We didn't have the drugs that messed you up for years, and
use it one time and ruin your brain.
And I understand why a woman that is struggling with 4 kids throws one of them out. But I also understand the other mom that's got 4 kids. She's kind of got in line, not wanting to take that one kid in. Andrews was in the top 10% of teen suicides and was in the top 10 in the nation in teen pregnancy. So something needed to be done. And, we were trying to find out what it was, and that's when God just put on my heart that we're going to have concerts. So I started trying to form what Yeshua could do, and it was during the time that the Democrats are really kicking down on 501c3s, and it took us a long time to get formed. But we pushed on, and there was a man that came out to the Ace Arena the Andrews County Expo. That's the biggest building we had in Andrews, and that's the only place that we could hold a concert. And he had asked me, or they got me in touch with him, so I thought, this is it. This is what he wants me to do. I'll hire this guy to put the concert on, and I'm done. So I hired the guy. The concert wasn't a flop, but it wasn't what God was wanting, and he told me that afterwards. He said, I didn't get you to hire somebody. I could have done that. I want you to put them on. So we regrouped and went ahead and got the bank accounts and everything set up for what Yeshua can do. And I've got 10 acres west of Andrews, and we have been planning on building out there for years. And we were driving out there one Sunday night, and my wife looked at me and said, Greg, do you think we can ever have the Newsboys? And I said, no. I said, it'll be 7, 8, 10 years before we get the Newsboys. We've got to build our reputation up before some band of that magnitude would come to Andrews, Texas. Well, that Wednesday, a guy named John Pinnell out of Artesia, New Mexico, called me up, and he works for a company called Parallel that GTG Automation had done business with. And he said, I don't want you to think this is conflict of interest, that you have to do this because you work for us, but I've got Newsboys coming. Do you think you can handle it? And I said, I don't know, John. Let me pray about it, and I'll tell you. Well, my prayer was, God, if the Ace is open, we'll do it. So I called the Ace, and, they're very busy there and have ropings every weekend, but that day was open. So we committed to having the Newsboys, which is a whole different ball game with riders and stuff. And so we started meeting, and before we knew it, we had over 20 different churches involved with what Yeshua can do. That was another goal of mine with what Yeshua can do. When I grew up in Andrews, we might play softball with one of the other Baptist churches.
That was about it.
That was it.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't your idea, nobody got involved with you. It was like, they're my kids. Y'all aren't stealing my members, and we can't be together because you might talk them into coming over here and take them away from us. And so it was awesome to get over 20 churches working together for the common goal. And, one day we will be the church. We'll all come together, and that
Amen.
was the goal. We've had all kinds of dreams. Andrew Spotlight is one of them. Concerts is a good way to get kids, and food is a good way to get kids. And I was wanting a website with a calendar on it. So if the Catholics were feeding on Monday, the kids would go there. If the Methodist was feeding on Tuesday, the kids could go there. If First Baptist Church was feeding on Wednesday, the kids could go there. After game fellowships could be talked about there. But the kids, from what I understand, go from Friday at noon till Monday morning a lot of times without eating because they don't have any food at home. So I was wanting to figure out a way to put something together, because social media, the kids know from 2 years on can outrun me on the phone. They know how to operate it. Here, let me show you, and it's just amazing, their minds and how social media and the phones and whatnot, they pick up and they remember, good and bad. There's way more bad out there than there is good. We need to get more good out there. So that was another way that we've moved in, and I think helped the Andrews, is to get somewhere that they can commonly go look and see what's going on. We brought in assemblies. We brought in guys to do assemblies at the schools and got into the schools and visited on that nature. We're trying to get in and, like I said, feed the kids more, have hamburger feeds, that type of stuff. One concert in particular, we had Rapture Ruckus, and McDonald's had not been in Andrews. I know it sounds strange. We're the only town in America that McDonald's goes out of business, but they did go out of business, and then they came back. But they had come back into business, and they hadn't been there maybe 6 weeks, and we hit them up to give away some hamburgers, and they were more than willing to donate a bunch of hamburgers. And so we had hamburgers. We had, I think it was $5 ticket to the concert, and you got a hamburger. It was just to draw the kids in, get them off the street. I guess I need to back up and tell a little bit about Andrews. I think they say we're 15,000. We're about 25,000 if you count all the heads and not the water meters. But But we have one grocery store. We don't have a bowling alley. We don't have a movie theater. I'll tell everybody we have sex and softball for the kids to do. So we scream at the kids because they get in trouble, but we give them nothing else to do but to get in trouble. So it's our fault. We've recently voted alcohol in, which I don't believe is going to help. But anyway, I'll get back to my story. We had hamburgers at this concert, and we had a bunch of them left over. Well, so these kids started taking 15 and 20 hamburgers apiece. Well, I'm thinking, I'm going to follow y'all out to the parking lot because there's fixed to be a food fight, because that's what would have happened if it had been me and my friends taking hamburgers. Well, I went out there, and there wasn't one hamburger on the ground, and I asked that guy, I said, what are y'all doing? He said, I'm taking all these home to my brothers and sisters that need to eat. And it will just melt your heart. The kids of today are wanting to be loved or want to be disciplined. Yeah, there are some kiddos out there that need to be thumped a little harder than others that are rebels. But it comes from their parents. And I don't say that I guess I do say that in a bad way, but we've got to break the chain. They don't have to be a drunk just because their daddy was a drunk. They don't have to scream at their kids just because their parents did. They don't have to get pregnant at 15 just because their parents did. We have a camp down in Ozona, Texas. It's about 30 miles south of Ozona on the Comstock Highway, where we take kids in the summer, troubled kids in the summer, and try to get them to check their phone at the door and get them out doing scavenger hunts and water balloon fights, and basically get back to nature and look at the stars and cook s'mores and talk about Jesus. And it's amazing to watch these kids open up. I don't know of anybody in my family, immediate family, I don't really know of anybody that has committed suicide that's kin to me. And we start talking to these kids, and they have a brother, a sister, a mother, or uncle, somebody that's close to them that has committed suicide. And it just blows my mind, the cutting that goes on in today. And, I didn't know any friends that had parents in jail, prison. We go down there, and there's people that both parents are in prison, and there's somebody that they really don't even know that's taking them in and raising them. And, I keep thinking drugs, alcohol, pregnant is all the issues these kids have, but that's not what they have. There's a lot more that are mentally issues that bother these kids. Social media, when I was a kid, somebody called me a punk. We threw down, got over it, got up, went on. Or I didn't see him for weeks. That texting, when they just bully and you can't get away from it. And every time you pick up your phone, they're saying something on the phone. They're all saying about sticks and stones. Break my bones, words will never hurt me. But these words hurt these kids, and they start believing what these other teens are telling them, that they're no good. Your daddy killed himself. Won't you just kill yourself? You hear that you're not any good long enough, you start believing it yourself. And that's what we're trying to break. We've got to get some mentors in there. I'm 53, fit to be 54. They will listen to me a little bit, but I need some 20s and 30-year-old guys that have struggled with some of this stuff, and ladies too, that can relate to these kiddos. I wish we could get something started in Andrews that would sweep the nation. We have a CPS, Child Protection Service, that'll come get the kids if you're beating on them. But there's nowhere for these kids that finally realize, hey, home isn't good to go.
Right.
They can't just step out and go into some kind of home that'll take care of them because they're getting beat every day or sexually abused. We need some kind of center, in my mind, for those that we can take away from the situation. We asked the police in Andrews, Texas for a curfew, and they said that they're not going to do a curfew because a lot of times home life is worse than street life.
They just need a place to escape to.
And I use the ranch down in Ozona a lot of times to escape to from the stress at work. And my mom, they used to live down there, and I'd go down there and I'd start mowing the yard, or weeds, whatever they were. It's mostly rock. And she'd say, don't come down here and work. I said, Mother, it's so peaceful just to know I got to go down there, turn around, come back, go down. I didn't have to think about any other thing, other 52 hands or this or that. You just go down there and relax your mind. God built the world, and the seventh day he rested. And we never rest anymore, and I believe that's why the diseases have taken over everywhere, because we can't rest.
Right.
You know, used to and you know, everybody thinks that they can't remember anything, that their minds are going. I don't think it's that. We got our minds so full of stuff. Used
Yep.
to you picked up the eggs, you milked the cows, and you went and cut the hay or whatever, and that's all you had to remember.
And when it got dark, you went to bed.
But today there's just so many things that's in your head, and
Right.
you're always thinking of something else, and it's
Well, your mind is so overstimulated with social media. I mean, when they're not talking with their friends, they're texting with their friends, or they're looking at something on social media. And grown-ups, that's us too. You know, I catch myself, I'm sitting here and I'm working for 3 or 4 hours on social media. I turn around, it's 11 o'clock, and I'm trying to do 2 hours of sleep and then get up and go. And, you know, we're all facing that. But yeah, with
six-pack of Red Bulls.
I
and go.
would have hated, you know, I don't think I would have made it if I'd had the things that our kids have to deal with today. I don't think I would have made it. And there's a lot of them that don't. And I thank you that you've got the vision to help these kids. It's rare these days, and it shouldn't be. I think that we're getting to a point now, though, because of what you're doing and the call on your life, and what we're seeing God call men to be men, and to heal the sons and the fathers. That in Malachi it talks about, you know, that time when, you know, we have that restoration, that reconciliation, and we need that desperately. But we've got to be able, and we've got to be willing to take the time, get off our butts, get our heads out of Facebook, and do it. And I think that's amazing what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing.
We've had Matthew West several times, 2 times in Andrews, once in Carlsbad, I believe once in Hobbs, or maybe Artesia. But he's so amazing because he writes all his songs, and he has that one song that where he screams out to God, "Why don't you do something?" And he stands back and says, "I did. I created you." You know, and I want to put that on my Facebook page every day. You know, we are created. We need to do something. I hear so much at church. I'm not called to do that. You know, I'm with them all week long. I don't want to go help with the kids. We had 69 kids in our youth group. I'm talking 7th grade down the other morning, and our building's just not that big, but it's awesome to see those kids come, because they're not drug kids. Most of the kids that come to Cowboy Church, parents aren't there. You know, they come because they want to be around, they want to hear, they want to be loved, you know, and we try to hug them up and love them, and it's just amazing to watch. And I don't know how you can see all that and not get involved. You know, I've stood up several times and asked for help with the concerts. You know, you got to give to get, and I will certainly take all the blessings, but anybody that wants to give can give, and they will be blessed also. I guess I can go ahead and, what Yeshua can do is YESHUA. It's whatyeshuacando.com. There's a place to give there and be blessed. There's a place there to be prayed for. There's a place there to volunteer if you want to start volunteering for these concerts. We've done concerts in Junction. We've done concerts in Alamogordo. We've done concerts in Carlsbad. We've done concerts in Artesia, Hobbs, Andrews. We've done over 40 concerts since 2012, 3 years. That's huge, folks. But there's people asking us all over, how do we do this? How do we do this? So we're writing a book to help people along that path that want to do this. I've told several people, I'm working on my HRA, and that's my heavenly retirement account. You know, all this stuff you do on earth, you can't take with you. But the stuff that we're doing right there gets to go with you. You know, everybody's heard the poem at the funerals about the dash between the dates. That's exactly what you are, is the dash. But I want that dash to be my bottom line. And my bottom line is these concerts. And when I'm gone 50 years from now and people are still doing concerts from what we've taught them to do, my dash is still living, although I'm gone. And it would be just a great legacy to leave something that continues on after we're gone. Again, the song, y'all have heard it, break all the chains. We have to break the chains. We've got to bring back America to where we were. we've got to get knees on the ground. Boots on the ground ain't going to help. We've got to get knees on the ground.
Yes, sir.
And that'll bring America back to where we need to be. God blessed us. God will bless us again. But we can't take God out of everything and then blame God for the issues that we're having. We've got to get him back in the schools. We've got to get him back in the homes. Again, there's so many people that won't come to a church because of what the church has represented over the last 30 years. I've been so scared for Crossbar Cowboy Church to get above 200 members because when I see a church get to 200 members, politics comes in and Jesus leaves. It's not because he leaves, it's because we throw him out and we start trying to run the church instead of letting him run the church. And it's not the same anymore. When the Holy Spirit quits showing up, you might as well shut the doors.
Yeah, because he's what it's all about.
Yeah.
We have been talking, and it's been an amazing talk with Greg Griffin with GTG Automation in Andrews, and there's so much more than that. Can we have that address one more time for people that would like to be blessed by helping out this ministry?
www.whatyeshua.com.
Greg, thank you.
Thank you, Spencer.
I'm Spencer Bennett. Until next time, God bless.